Oh, yeah, it is a brand new year. And, of course, a brand new 2019 season. You're listening to Breaking Down Security. This is Brian Brake. As always, my poncho to my lefty here is Mr. Betcher.
Maybe not as always, but as often as possible.
Well, yeah, we're, you're kind of a big deal now on the internets and stuff. So, I have to make do with, all the ingredients. Sometimes I'm missing an egg or two in the break-sec pie here. So Ms. Berlin is actually driving through a blizzard in Ohio, presumably, I would guess, and she is not going to be able to make it. I did not realize she would be driving through a blizzard when that was happening. So
yeah, I told her not to get that smart car, but
yeah, no.
They don't do well in blizzards.
No, they don't. They tend to get thrown around a little bit. So if she's listening and still driving, Ms. Berlin, please be safe when you're listening to this in a couple days. So this is the 2019 season, and if you are listening for the first time, welcome. We've had a lot of new listeners over the past couple weeks. And just to tell you a little bit about ourselves, Breaking Down Security is starting our sixth season, our sixth year. We started back in 2014. And it was just me and Mr. Betcher at the time, so this is kind of apropos. We're starting our sixth season together, so that's pretty awesome. And, we're all about education. We try to, appeal to both the blue and the red team, and a little bit of everything in between. So you'll hear, like some of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight's on IoT stuff, which just came out from the OWASP Top 10. So we're going to have a person who's sitting in our green room right now, after a long day of snowboarding at Mammoth. So you'll get to hear about the OWASP Top 10. You may hear about Node.js. You may hear about lateral movement in your environment if a hacker gets in. So, I mean, we try to run the gamut. We've got about 250 episodes for you to download and listen to if you're a brand new listener. And, we'll talk about our Slack later on. And we have a Project Hannibal that's going on. It's going to be kind of a big deal if I can get it to make it work. So just a little teaser for that if you're interested. So, all right. Mr. Betcher, how are you doing today?
Today? Oh, I'm tired.
Yeah?
But, no rest for the weary.
Yeah? What's it like in Austin right now? What's the temperatures?
60s.
Oh, God, that's so nice. Yeah. We're actually fairly warm here. So Seattle's getting a bit of a respite from the winter rain that we get. So I went out and took a nice long 3-4 mile walk today. So that was nice. Went to see my doctor, found out my triglycerides are a little high. So I'm going to have to start, eating more salads, I guess. So yeah, that's how it goes. But I'm trying to straighten up my office. I have some stuff left over from when I went home to my grandfather's funeral. His Commodore 64 and a bunch of his modems and stuff. So I brought those home, and now I'm trying to unpack them and get them all nice so that I can try firing them up and making them work. So that's...
Wow.
I know.
Retro project here.
It is going to be a project. I'm hoping to actually do something with it. I've got 2 of them. I didn't realize it was the keyboard was the whole thing. So, apparently you can play video games, or like the disk drive that I have that he has that came with it. You can compile code and run codes, and I've got a VT100 on a disk drive that I'll be able to run terminal commands and stuff on. So I'm looking forward to tinkering with that once I figure out how to connect it to a monitor with HDMI. It only has S-video, so I've got to figure out how to make that work. I don't have a TV with rabbit ears on it anymore to be able to make the connections. So it's crazy. So I'm looking forward to that. I've got some ideas on how to do that from Amazon and connectors I can get. So right on. Well, let's get started with the 2019 season of Breaking Down Security. So mid-December, the OWASP folks over there, the Open Web Application Security people? Aaron, help me out. What's P stand for? OWASP.
Project.
Project,
yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. True to my word, I misspell things and mispronounce things. So the voice you're hearing is Aaron Guzman. He is one of the gentlemen and one of the people on the, I would say, committee or team, work group that drafted the Internet of Things Top 10, which is a brand new Top 10 that OWASP has created. Welcome, Aaron, to the show and to the new season on Breaking Down Security.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, one of the contributors to the OWASP IoT security project, and specifically the IoT Top 10. Mm-hmm. And so I'm helping lead the IoT efforts for OWASP with Daniel Miesler, Craig Smith, and we also have a few other leaders as well. So we have several other projects that are sub-projects within the IoT project, but our latest one is the Top 10, and that was the 28th of December. So, literally right the last few days before 2018 is when we released it. Mm-hmm. So, kind of right in between all the midst of holidays and New Year's. So, definitely want to get some visibility out there and people, the awareness and, obviously we're going to go through each of the items and what that means to people and how they can apply it.
Right. So, Aaron, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself. Everybody's got an origin story. Maybe you could tell us how you got to where you're at working with OWASP, and what made you interested in InfoSec and security as a whole.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So my current role, I work for Aon and the Cyber Solutions Group. So Aon's a kind of large insurer, worldwide corporation, but I work in one of their subsidiaries of a cybersecurity firm. I lead their automotive and IoT testing practice. So consultancy, basically. Red teams from that sense, reverse engineering, doing validation of firmware, of even SDLC maturity reviews for let's say ODMs or partners or suppliers who are developing software for, say, auto manufacturer, or say even IoT consumer manufacturer, for example. Mm-hmm. But as far as OWASP is concerned, I've been involved for over 5 years with OWASP, maybe 6 years. I just dropped off of the OWASP Los Angeles board to kind of focus efforts on, for example, the project. We have a lot of good things going to come out this year, which we'll probably talk about later on. But other than being involved with the IoT project, I also lead the embedded application security project. And what that entails is best practices for developers and how to better develop or code for firmware, or even prevent from, let's say, for example, memory corruption vulnerabilities or command injections, or even how to inventory your libraries and how to create a example of a software bill of materials. So that's some of the efforts I'm involved in with OWASP, outside of OWASP a little bit, still involved in IoT, but in different nonprofit organizations such as Cloud Security Alliance. I'm also the co-chair of the IoT working group. So a lot of cross-pollination between OWASP and CSA. Obviously, we have similar efforts and similar goals and similar visions as far as IoT is concerned. So we try to make sure that we get kind of the AppSec mentality with the kind of cloud systems, infrastructure mentality as well, and more of kind of like a governance at the same time. So in 2019, we'll also see some more collaboration between OWASP, CSA, and other nonprofits or other groups as well. Again, because we're all working towards the same goal, and the idea is to minimize efforts, especially if we're all working towards the same goal.
Right. Okay. So Mr. Betcher, how many IoT devices do you have in your house? And think about it before you actually say, that you don't have any. Do you have a Roomba or anything?
Yes.
You have a Roomba? Really?
I do.
I wasn't trying to make fun. I just was picking like what the most typical thing I would expect to see.
Yeah.
I don't
IoT.
Do you have like a washing machine or dryer or anything? No. TV? Is your TV
Nothing
internet
that
connected?
Connects to the internet like that. I mean, just would you count phones? in on that?
Yeah, well, I mean,
Not really. DVRs.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Those connect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not much.
Yeah.
I haven't. I haven't bought into the whole IoT thing. I saw a tweet the other day. It's like, these things that we had 20 years ago, they just worked.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've got this IoT stuff we have to constantly update, and it's not working properly. I mean, sometimes my car doesn't connect to Bluetooth. I have to basically re-image the entire car's operating system in order to get Bluetooth to connect to my phone sometimes. It's really annoying. So the reliability has gone down from my perspective on these particular devices.
Right. And, it just adds the complexity of having the internet connected to these things. I didn't have a lot of IoT devices in my house until I realized that my car is now my biggest IoT device in my house. I have the good fortune of getting a Tesla Model 3, and the first thing you do is you hook it up to Wi-Fi and connect it, and it downloads updates. And my wife has a cooking instrument or something that she uses called a Thermomix, and the first thing you got to do is connect it to Wi-Fi so it can download the recipes from the mobile app that you're looking through. And the wife's like, "Oh, what's the Wi-Fi password? I need to hook it up into Thermomix." I'm like, "Nope." And she's like, "Well, I can't use it if you don't give it to me." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, great." My TV would be smarter if I had it hooked up to Ethernet. It's one of the last it doesn't have Wi-Fi, but it does. It's a Samsung, and it does have Ethernet, but it's not connected to Wi-Fi. So, so everybody.
There are some cars that you, sort of like the scooters that you get on and ride around town with the scooter. Well, they actually have cars like that too. I forgot the company, but if they don't have an internet connection where they're parked, you can't use them.
Oh my goodness!
They don't even open.
Is that a security thing?
They don't start. Well, you have to pay them in order to use it. So if you can't pay them, and they don't get the instructions to actually start the engine,
the unlock code, or
unlock the doors,
the go code or whatever,
they have to be towed, right to a proper. They have to be towed to a Wi-Fi location so that they can actually start and open.
That's crazy. I haven't heard anything like that. That's crazy. All right. So, Aaron, so you guys, you work with IoT devices and car operating systems and such. What was the impetus for the OWASP Top 10? I mean, just a little bit of Googling came up for myself, at least a half a dozen different, IoT standards. Why did OWASP need to get involved with this? It seems like the OWASP is web application security, not necessarily, IoT devices. Yeah.
So the whole idea between the IoT project between Daniel and Craig Smith and some others, back in 2014, which, 5 years ago now, there wasn't many standards out, and there wasn't many guidance out on how to properly develop, deploy, defend, for IoT security in general, and that's what Daniel and Craig set out, and the other project leaders set out to do. And now today, it's more of an updated list, or as far as our top 10, it's more of an updated perspective, and taking into account the industry publications that, whether there are standards, whether there are general guidance publications, whether they're cheat sheets, whether there are, corporate, blogs, for example, that have their own top 7, top 9, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And as well as data sets that we've also taken into consideration. And that was part of our kind of methodology to come up with our top 10, to ensure that we are on the same page as, every other type of industry guidance that's out there with regards to IoT security. We're not trying to create some white noise, although we do recognize that others do look at OWASP and even for IoT as a kind of de facto kind of company for reference. And OWASP isn't a OWASP Top 10, even the web, even the mobile, and even IoT were not necessarily standards. These are again, kind of organic, curated lists and guidance that's created by volunteers and volunteers who are in the industry and working in day out in IoT, for example, in mobile, in web. So kind of a high level overview of what we do from that perspective, and our list that we published is, again, not something that we've wasn't just like an easy list that we came up with here. Here's a straightforward 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It was several rounds and edits and reviews, and even from the idea of a top 10, we had a top 10 do's and don'ts. One for we thought of splitting it up for consumers, for manufacturers, for maybe people who are defending. But at the end of the day, what we did was came up with a solidified or a simplified single list that can entail all 10 things to avoid, which can help in each facet of IoT security, again, from developing, even from testing, and from deploying or defending.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that when I first saw that this was published, the first thing I said was, well, this is going to be the new standard, because I work at a security company. I work at Leviathan Security, for those of you who are new to the show. I just started working there 6 months ago as a project manager for customer engagements. And a lot of our customer engagements are web-based. And the only standard that we pull out or we compare against is the OWASP Top 10. So when I saw the IoT Top 10, the first thing I thought of was, well, this is going to be the new standard. So when you guys decided on the initial criteria, you said this isn't the first iteration of this list. Were any of the people in your work group, was there I don't know, were there people from other companies that are, doing IoT on that? Because what I'm thinking of is how HTML5 was done. It was all open with W3C until, the heavy hitters like the Microsofts and the Googles and the Facebooks and those got involved with HTML5. And then some say it just kind of went to pot all of a sudden. So how is this... is there an analog to this elsewhere, or I know you said you took from other sources, but what was the impetus for setting these in the order that they're in?
Yeah, so the first thing we did was again look at kind of the industry publications, number one, and look what was out there, and so actually take a step back. Number one was analyze our 2014 list and decipher whether is it still relevant today, and how relevant is it, and how can we apply it for our next release. What can we modify? What can we make better? And then the next again was the collection of basically sister projects and data collection from basically data sets and a number of vulnerabilities from or vulnerability data sets from third parties. And then they're mostly consultancy firms where you receive those types of or that type of information, but also industry data that's released. People release, the kind of top vulnerabilities they find for XYZ company for IoT, either through a blog post or through a tweet, and or whatever it may be. We took a number of those into consideration. Such as kind of the main ones, right? The main ones out there are the ENISA IoT baseline, for example, or the CTIA, which is for telecom providers or telecom. Let's say in some way, shape, or form involved with telecom, and then the others with NIST, for example, and then there's some private companies as well who are involved or that we took into consideration that publish these types of IoT lists, and something, again, most of them are in the consultancy realm, but still relevant, and still something that we definitely correlated to either our previous list and our current list now, and make sure we included those specific vulnerabilities, those threats, or even again the whole theme of this top 10 is top 10 things to avoid. Is the theme.
Right.
So what constitutes an IoT, though, in your opinion? What's the scope of this?
Well, generally anything that is an embedded device that is connected to the internet in some way, shape, or form, whether that is directly or indirectly connected to the internet. So now you have devices that are connected to the internet via, let's say, for example, Bluetooth. It's not directly, doesn't have an IP address, for example, or it's not directly connected to a network, but it gets network connection from, sharing Bluetooth internet connection as an example. And this is kind of similar to what the California new SB 327 Information Privacy Act that just passed this past year. It's actually supposed to be incorporated in 2020, but they define it as anything that has an address, a Bluetooth address, an IP address of some form, and typically it's an embedded device, and your vehicle could be an embedded device, but also there's several embedded devices within a vehicle, not just one main ECU, for example. There's several different microcontrollers that are involved.
Okay, so would it also include desktop, laptop computers?
No. That would be a kind of separate category, right? No, definitely not any desktop, laptop computers. Something that would kind of be similar would be maybe a Raspberry Pi, something that is ran by, or that is constrained constrained by hardware, constrained by software, but has a physical presence and connected to the internet. So cyber physical system is what we call them, or actually what the government constitutes them as, the cyber physical systems.
Okay. I just think there's a little gray area there because there's not much difference between a Raspberry Pi and a laptop from the 90s, right? Not too much.
Yeah. Even our mobile devices, right? I mean, we're walking around with these, connected, embedded devices that are, significantly powerful than what they were 6-7 years ago, or even, 2 years ago. There definitely is a gray area. There isn't like something that is a black and white definition. But the idea, again, is something that is embedded, constrained by hardware resources or software resources, and is connected to the internet in some way, directly or indirectly.
Yeah. Before I reached out to you and to Daniel. I was looking at this top 10 and I was like, oh, it looks like a Cisco device or something like that, would be, weak or guess hard coded passwords. You hear about, network connection, network infrastructure that has a hard coded password in it left over from a testing thing, or, having insecure ecosystem interfaces like, web applications. A lot of the stuff on this list, could apply to a lot of internet connected devices. So I was just, it's good to get that kind of, scoping because not only will the IoT list work for many of these embedded devices or network infrastructure, but even the additional like OWASP, top 10 stuff would also fit in this. So what happens when those kinds of things overlap? I mean, do you worry about, maybe the IoT things getting lost in your embedded devices work group, or with the web application stuff? Because a lot of IoT devices use web application, use a web UI to do administration. So, I was also interested in figuring out what an IoT device was. So that's awesome. So, cool. Let me see.
Yeah, Brian. So I just want to kind of comment on something you said earlier. I didn't touch upon fully.
Sure.
Was that like, why is OWASP, involved in IoT, right?
Yeah.
Along those lines, right? Like, why is OWASP an organization that would publish or release, guidance in some way? Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, again, OWASP, Open Web Application Security Project, everything comes down to code. Right. Whether it's a wireless protocol, at the end of the day, code, hardware is code, the mobile applications, everything's code. So for us and also the group, we came to the conclusion that if it helps the industry, if it helps a company, if it helps a consumer, we're going to put it out there. We're going to continue to put it out there. We're going to continue to release content that is practical and that others can use and reproduce and make applicable to their situation.
Okay.
So let's take number one, right? Weak, guessable, or hard-coded passwords. In my opinion, I don't have any facts yet to back this up, but that would constitute probably 80% of the problem, if not more. Do you say that's true?
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, it's huge because number one, we didn't say it directly, but number one could also be backdoors. Right? Hard-coded passwords or hard-coded credentials or API keys or something that the manufacturer or the integrator or the supplier can gain access, which is usually what happens, can gain access to the device remotely or for debugging purposes, whatever it is, whatever the purpose is. Yeah. I would say that's definitely a huge chunk. Mm-hmm. And, I mentioned that the new kind of California law or California Act that's been enacted and been approved, the SB 327. That is the number one recommendation, or actually it's going to be the law, really, is to provide a kind of custom authentication. There's no default passwords, for example, no more default passwords. So the idea behind that is, again, the kind of Mirai botnet, that took down the East Coast for a period of time, 3 hours in 2016 of October. And continues, right? But these botnets are ever changing after the source code release. And now you have like another 7, 8, 10 strains of different types of Mirai botnets, all taking advantage of the same default passwords or iterations of default passwords and word lists that these botnets are just brute forcing, right? Different governments are keen to trying to thwart these attacks, but at the same time, we don't want the government to be involved in technical means, right? They don't even, for the most part, understand what it takes to develop or defend. But still, in regards to all the kind of incidents that have been occurring, and even the availability of infrastructures, it's a big deal, and it's going to continue to be a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, has been equated to the GDPR of Europe in how stringent it is with regards to privacy. So, it's important that people get on board with that, because I know a lot of people in California buy things, and it's definitely going to be a ripple effect across country, in my opinion. So one of the other things, let me pull up the top 10 here. So, you put these 1 to 10 I know you've got they're color coded and everything, but so you actually put these in order of importance, or was there any specific order that you guys put these in? Are they categorized in any specific way? How did you guys decide that number one was going to be weak guessable, hard coded passwords? Is that just the one that, stuck out in everybody's mind versus something like physical hardening, which is number 10?
It is a light categorization. They're all very important, and they're all the top issues that are within IoT security. And they're ranked as so, but they are generally, they're all very important. And it's not to say 10 is not important at all as far as physical hardening and default settings and secure default settings. They're all very, very important, except the kind of main issues that we see, and also the feedback from the industry, from colleagues, from folks who are highly respected in InfoSec. It's definitely all in agreement. With regards to number one. But again, the list is all important. We didn't. We moved some things around as far as the rankings of 1 through 10, but I wouldn't advocate that it's a hard measure of level of severity or of an issue if someone's trying to map to their environment. They're all equally important. Some have higher impact depending on the business use case. Right. But again, what we're trying to do is capture the top 10 things to avoid when dealing with IoT security. And again, that is for the developers, manufacturers, enterprises, and consumers.
Cool. Okay.
So a lot of different groups, a lot of different audiences, and some of these items will apply to one group more than another.
Mm-hmm. So one of the other things I thought of when I was looking through these is how some of them are fairly similar. Insecure network services, insecure ecosystem interfaces. Usually the services begat the interface. So if HTTP is running on the box, or HTTPS in this case, the API in number 3 would depend on the HTTP service in number 2, or number 4 with the update secure mechanism versus number 8, the lack of device management. Couldn't those run along the same lines with regards to being somewhat the same vulnerability? If you're not if you don't have good device management, the chance of there being a secure update mechanism may not be there, or, I was just trying to figure out, let's go through 2 and 3, for instance. What was the delineation between insecure network services and ecosystems? Because it seems like that there could be some similarities there.
Yeah. So 2 and 3. I'll start with 3 first, and I'll compare it to the 2014 version. What 3 is supposed to represent compared to the 2014 version is the mobile, the web, and the API basically items in the top 10 for 2014. We combined them into number 3 and put them in not necessarily a bucket, but and just categorize them as the interfaces for an ecosystem. And yes, it's a big bucket, right? APIs and cloud and mobile are, you have different facets of mobile, Android, iOS, and whatever versions that the particular device is running on, or whatever it depends on. But that was kind of our idea to kind of incorporate, all 3 of those interfaces or inputs into a device into one item, and as opposed to, let's say, the number 2, which is the insecure network services, where these network services aren't necessarily APIs or a cloud or mobile interface. A cloud interface could be something like Azure, AWS, for example, S3 buckets. The kind of general big issues there. Misconfigurations is what we like to think of it as. Right. But insecure network services could be Telnet, FTP, known vulnerable protocols that are being used or that are known to be or are deprecated, and are don't have a secure way to harden their security posture. But to your point, there is a lot of overlap. Without, with number 10, for example, lack of physical hardening, and to gain a remote attack, there could be a hard-coded password that can give you a remote attack, or there could be a vulnerable Telnet service, or a vulnerable update service, or over-the-air updates, and you get access, via sniffing on the local interfaces. So there definitely is some overlap, although there are some delineations between on-device and the ecosystem itself. Right. Everything that touches the device.
And that was this week's part 1 of our interview with Aaron Guzman. We're going to have part 2 coming up next week, so please keep a lookout for that. before we go, just want to say you can find Aaron Guzman on Twitter at scriptingxss. So scriptingxss, like the web vulnerability. You can find Ms. Berlin at InfoSystir, INFOSYSTIR. Brian Betcher, Mr. Betcher, is found at Betcherpwned, BOETTCHERPWNED. And you can follow the podcast on our Twitter at Brakesec, BRAKESEC. And, part 2 will be up next week. So before we go, again, thanks to our patrons for their support. If you're interested in helping out with, the hosting or the, taking a little bit of tip jar there for people if you find value from the show you've just listened to. We appreciate all of our patrons' support. So finally, check out www.breakingsecurity.com. That's BRAKEING security.com. You can get links to other shows that we've done, over 250 episodes. You can also find links to where you can download and listen to us on various apps like iTunes, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, that kind of thing. So that was it for this week. Aaron Guzman will join us again, of course, next week. So until then, this is Brian. For everybody breaking down security, have a great week. Be nice to one another. Take care of yourself, because you're the only you have. And we'll talk to you again soon.